The sea stretched endlessly in every direction, a smooth, glassy expanse of shifting blue and soft gray. The early morning mist clung low to the surface, weaving in lazy tendrils over the gentle swells. The sun, still hidden beneath the horizon, cast a pale glow against the edges of the clouds, painting the sky in soft hues of lavender and dusky rose. The only sound was the rhythmic lapping of water against the hull of the small ship, a modest, sturdy vessel with a single white sail that swayed gently in the damp breeze. The wooden deck creaked faintly with each subtle rise and fall of the tide, and the rigging hummed with a quiet, soothing tension. I stood at the helm, one hand resting on the worn, salt-smoothed wheel, the other cradling a steaming cup of tea. The warmth seeped into my fingers, chasing away the cool damp of the misty morning. I breathed in deep, filling my lungs with the briny air, thick with the scent of salt and wood and the faint, distant trace of something green, kelp perhaps, or unseen shorelines far beyond sight. I had been at sea for weeks now, though the exact count of days had long since slipped from memory. Out here, time seemed to stretch and fold, one day blending into the next in a soft, seamless procession of light, water, and sky. The horizon was an endless line, a gentle promise of possibility, and I was content to follow it wherever it might lead. Seabirds wheeled overhead, their white wings catching the first touch of morning light as they called to one another in soft, echoing cries. Their sound was sharp against the hush of the sea, yet soothing in its familiarity. I watched as one dipped low to the water's surface, plucking some unseen morsel from the glassy waves before rising again with a few strong beats of its wings. The gentle sway of the boat was a constant, a familiar lullaby beneath my feet. The ship itself was small but faithful, every inch of it known to me. The deck was worn smooth by years of weather and travel. Coiled ropes hung in neat loops along the railings, their fibers stiff with salt and age. The sail, patched and mended more times than I could count, billowed softly in the shifting wind. I left the helm and wandered to the starboard side, letting the cool mist brush against my face. Droplets clung to my skin, cool and clean, and I closed my eyes for a moment, listening to the subtle music of the waves, water lapping against wood, the occasional creak of a spar, the soft rustle of the sail, 1,000 tiny sounds blending into one serene, endless lullaby. Breakfast was simple. A piece of hard bread, softened by a smear of honey and a wedge of sharp, crumbly cheese. I ate it slowly, savoring each bite as I watched the mist begin to thin, revealing the wide, unbroken expanse of the open sea. No other ships, no distant shores, just the endless embrace of water and sky. The sun finally rose, a soft sphere of pale gold climbing above the horizon. Its light broke across the water in shimmering bands, turning the mist to drifting threads of silver and pearl. The air warmed, and with it came the familiar scent of salt-baked wood and sun-warmed rope. I spent the morning tending to small tasks, checking the rigging, coiling loose ropes, wiping down the deck where the damp had settled in tiny puddles. These simple chores were their own kind of meditation, each movement unhurried and deliberate, a quiet ritual in the endless rhythm of life at sea. By midday, the sun hung high in a flawless blue sky, and the water shimmered like molten glass. The wind had dropped to a soft, steady breeze, barely enough to tug at the sail. The ship moved languidly, content to drift along the vast, gentle swells. I settled into a worn chair at the bow, my legs stretched out before me, and let my thoughts wander. Out here, alone with the sea and sky, there was no hurry, no noise, no expectation. The days belonged to the tides, the winds, and the quiet movements of the sun across the heavens. Occasionally, a school of silver fish would break the surface nearby, scattering in a burst of sunlight and ripples. The glint of their scales was dazzling, brief flashes of light that vanished as quickly as they appeared. A dolphin surfaced once, its sleek body arching through the water before vanishing beneath the waves with barely a ripple. The hours passed in gentle, unmarked moments. I read from an old leather-bound book whose pages had gone soft with age and salt. The words were familiar, a story I had read 100 times, but out here, each sentence felt new. Each passage a quiet gift to be savored. Later, as afternoon slid lazily toward evening, the wind picked up, tugging at the sail with playful fingers. The ship responded eagerly, leaning into the breeze as the water darkened to deep, rich blue. The waves grew taller, rolling in broad, gentle swells that rocked the ship with a soothing, cradling motion. Clouds gathered at the edge of the horizon, pale and soft at first, then deepening to shades of steel and silver as the sun began its slow descent. The scent of rain rode the wind, clean and sharp, mingling with the salt. I pulled on a heavy cloak, its fabric stiff with old salt stains, and made sure the deck was clear, the ropes secure. The storm would not be fierce, a gentle, passing rain, the kind that washed the world clean and left the air heavy with the scent of earth and sky. The first drops fell as the sun kissed the horizon, painting the clouds in hues of peach and crimson. The rain was soft, 1,000 tiny drumming fingers against the wood, the sail, the water's surface. It blurred the horizon, softening the edges of sea and sky until they blended into one endless, misty expanse. I stood at the bow, the rain beating on my skin, my hair damp and heavy against my shoulders. The water fell in a steady, gentle curtain, its sound a lullaby that merged with the sigh of the wind and the endless hush of the sea. There was a peace in it, a quiet joy that came not from excitement or novelty, but from the steady, familiar rhythm of the world. The ship rocked softly beneath my feet. The rain washed the deck clean, and the air smelled of salt and storm and faraway shores. Dinner was warm and simple, a stew of dried beans and salted fish, simmered with herbs gathered from a distant port. It filled the small cabin with a rich, savory scent, and I ate slowly, each bite a comfort against the damp. The storm passed quickly, the rain easing to a fine mist, then fading altogether. The clouds broke apart, revealing a sky awash in stars. The sea reflected them, 1,000 tiny lights scattered across its surface, and for a moment it felt as though the ship sailed through the very heavens. I stepped back onto the deck, the air cool and sweet. The sail hung loose, the wind gone, and the ship drifted in a slow, lazy circle, its reflection perfectly mirrored in the glassy water. I lay on the deck, gazing up at the stars. The constellations were old friends, Orion, his belt bright and clear, the North Star steady in its place, the soft arc of the Milky Way, a pale, endless river across the sky. The night was utterly silent, save for the occasional slap of water against the hull. I felt the ship beneath me, the vastness of the sea around me, the endless stretch of sky above. There was no loneliness in it, only peace. Somewhere far off, a whale called, a long, low, mournful sound that carried across the water and seemed to vibrate in my very bones. I smiled, eyes still on the stars, and let the sound settle into the night. I slept beneath the sky, the stars wheeling slowly overhead. The gentle rock of the ship was a cradle, the cool air a balm. Dreams came softly, of distant lands and strange, shimmering islands, of mist-shrouded cliffs and hidden coves where the sea sang in voices only sailors could hear. Morning returned in gentle shades of blue and gray. The sun rose once more, pale and shy, casting a faint glow over the water. A thin mist clung to the waves, and the air was heavy with dew. I rose, stretching the stiffness from my limbs, and made tea over the small flickering flame in the cabin. The scent of it, sharp and clean, mingled with the salty air. I took my place at the helm once more, the wheel cool beneath my hands. The wind stirred, a faint, teasing promise, and the sail fluttered in response. I smiled, alone, but never lonely, adrift but never lost, carried forward on the endless welcoming embrace of the sea. And ahead, always, the horizon, an unbroken line of light and water, a promise of places yet to be discovered, of mornings yet to come. The morning broke in a hush of pale mist and soft silver light. The sea lay still and endless around me, the gentle sway of the boat as familiar as the rise and fall of my own breath. I rose from where I'd rested on the deck, my cloak damp with dew, and stretched slowly, feeling the ache of old weathered muscles. The air was cool, carrying the scent of salt and something green and distant, the faintest promise of land far beyond sight. I inhaled deeply, savoring it. The wide stretch of water glimmered in the early light, its surface a shifting mirror of sky and mist. The kettle sang its quiet tune in the small cabin, and soon the warm scent of steeping tea drifted into the crisp air. I cupped the mug in my hands, the warmth a simple comfort against the morning's chill. The only sounds were the lap of water against the hull, and the occasional distant call of a seabird, lost somewhere in the mist. It had been many days since I'd last seen shore. The ship, small and sturdy, carried me steadily through the quiet reaches of the sea. Out here there were no roads, no markers, no voices but the wind and water. I had long stopped counting the days. It mattered little. Each dawn was a gift, each dusk a quiet promise, and the horizon forever called. I let the boat drift for a while, savoring the stillness. The mist clung low to the water, muting the light, softening every edge until sky and sea became one. I moved quietly, tending to small tasks, coiling lines, brushing salt from the deck, adjusting the sail to catch a lazy breath of wind. Later, when the sun climbed higher and the mist began to lift, a thin, distant line appeared on the horizon. Land. It was faint, little more than a smudge between sea and sky, but unmistakable. My heart stirred at the sight. It had been weeks since I'd stepped on solid ground, and while the sea was my home, the thought of earth beneath my feet and the scent of wood smoke and bread was a gentle pull. I adjusted the sail and set a steady course, the wind picking up in soft, steady gusts. The boat responded eagerly, leaning into the breeze as the water darkened to deeper blue. The waves rose in slow rolling swells, and the ship rode them with a grace born of long practice. As the hours passed, the line of land grew clearer. Low hills cloaked in green, a scattering of trees, and beyond them, the faint shape of a village nestled against the shore. A small dock reached into the water, and from the distance, I could just make out the pale gleam of lantern light, flickering even in daylight. I smiled to myself. I hadn't planned to seek land so soon, but the sight of it stirred something within me. The memory of warm hearths and friendly voices, of stories traded over simple meals. The horizon would wait. The afternoon deepened, the sky turning a richer shade of blue as the sun began its slow descent. The air carried the scent of earth and trees now, mingling with the salt of the sea. Seabirds wheeled overhead, their cries sharper, louder, and the water grew shallower, shifting in color from deep sapphire to bright, glassy green. I guided the ship into the small cove, the waves gentling to soft ripples. The dock was weathered, its wood pale and smooth from years of tide and salt. A figure waited there, lantern in hand, the glow catching on the lines of his face. He raised a hand in greeting as I drew near. "Evening, sailor," the man called, his voice carrying easily across the water. "Evening," I replied, a quiet warmth stirring in my chest. I secured the boat, tying the lines with practiced ease. The land felt strange beneath my boots, solid and unmoving after so many days of gentle rolling waves. I stood for a moment, letting the newness of it settle, then followed the man along the dock. The village was small, a cluster of cottages with thatched roofs and stone chimneys. Smoke curled into the darkening sky, carrying with it the scent of wood smoke and cooking herbs. The streets were narrow, cobbled, and worn smooth by generations of footsteps. A tavern sat at the heart of it, its windows aglow. Music drifted from within, the soft pluck of a lute, the steady pulse of a drum. Voices rose in laughter, and the warmth of it wrapped around me like a long-forgotten blanket. The man led me through the door, and at once the hush of the sea was replaced by the easy murmur of conversation and the scent of roast meat and spiced ale. A fire crackled in the hearth, its glow catching on polished wood and weathered faces. The innkeeper, a stout woman with gray in her hair and a kind light in her eyes, greeted me with a nod. "You've the look of the sea about you," she said, setting a tankard before me. "Welcome." I took a seat near the fire, the warmth sinking into my skin, chasing away the chill that the sea had left in my bones. The ale was smooth and dark, carrying notes of honey and smoke. It warmed my throat as it went down, and for a long while I simply sat, letting the voices and music wash over me. Stories flowed as easily as the drink, tales of storms and strange creatures glimpsed in the mist, of ships that vanished without a trace, and of distant lands where the sand was white as bone and the trees bled red sap. I added a few of my own, though quietly, my voice barely rising above the murmur of the room. There was no need to boast, no need for grandeur. It was enough to speak of the quiet peace of open water, the song of wind in the rigging, the shimmer of stars on a cloudless night. As the evening deepened, the fire burned low, and one by one the villagers drifted away, leaving the tavern hushed. I took a final drink and stepped outside. The night was clear and cool, the stars scattered across the sky in a bright, endless tapestry. The air was rich with the scent of earth and salt. I made my way down to the shore, the sea a dark, whispering thing beneath the starlight. The ship waited, a pale shape against the water, its sail furled. I touched its side, the wood smooth beneath my fingers, and smiled. Tomorrow I would set out again, the horizon waiting. The sea would call me back, as it always did. But for this night I was content. I settled onto the sand, the cool grains shifting beneath me, and watched the stars wheel overhead. The hush of the waves was a lullaby, the earth beneath me steady and sure. For the sailor's heart is never truly at rest. It belongs to the water, to the wind, to the promise of what lies beyond the horizon.